Welcome to Shh, We Don't Talk About That. I'm Joanna, this is Natalie, and today's episode is Don't Break Things. Use DBT instead.
I think that's a perfect title.
Not too bad. I'm not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
No. And I'm not saying it's a great title because I thought of it.
But she is.
But
she kind of
But
is.
I really am.
Right.
I really am.
But it is a great title. Anyway.
All right. As you said, we're talking about dialectical behavioral therapy today, which
Correct.
is DBT, i.e. don't break things.
Correct.
Because when our emotions get high and we don't have a way to regulate them and manage them, things get out of control. So that's where DBT can definitely come in. So DBT was created in the late 70s by Marsha Linehan. Originally, she was a suicide researcher. So she was looking for ways to kind of decrease suicide rates and how to help kind of balance individuals' thoughts, feelings, reactions, and emotions. And subsequently, DBT was created. Once it kind of got going, it was primarily used for people that were diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. But has since been evolved into, it can pretty much help with just about any kind of mental health issue, any kind of mental health concern, because it's really teaching you how to pay attention to your body, your thoughts, your behaviors, your reactions, all of it, so that you are in the driver's seat and it's not taking you over, which I think is pretty awesome. And I think it was 2011 when Marsha actually kind of told the world that she had struggled with being diagnosed with borderline personality. Not at a super young age because they didn't know what it was. She was kind of diagnosed with like some schizoaffective, schizophrenic type stuff back then because they had no idea what it was. But a lot of the behaviors that she was doing and a lot of things she was feeling later on in life was diagnosed borderline. So that, shouldn't say that. Well, someone that was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Person first language, Natalie. So inherently everything that she kind of created with DBT actually helped her kind of better understand herself and grow and evolve and change throughout her life, which is pretty awesome.
It is. And DBT is one of those things, it's a conglomeration of modalities. So it's not just one. And it helps you prepare for self-accountability.
Mm-hmm.
DBT can be found in all different types of therapy modalities, though. So different parts of it. And what she did was she found the ones that specifically addressed behavior and the thought process behind it. She pulled those out from different therapy types and put them together where they fit the best into 4 different categories.
Mm-hmm.
And those categories were mindfulness, interpersonal effectiveness, distress tolerance, and I always forget the last one. Interpersonal effectiveness. I've got them all in the book here, so don't worry, we'll get into it. But emotion regulation.
Yes.
And having those 4 categories helped her kind of split up the different techniques and things into like, this is how you can help this thing, this is where you can do this thing, and then she created this incredible manual, which as you can see, I have dog here at the top of it. We're going to talk about a bunch of it, but this is what I learned through U of M. And one of the things that we should talk about is there is a traditional form of doing dialectical behavioral therapy, which is a 3-pronged way.
Yes.
And what is that?
So for the 3 prongs, it's weekly individual sessions where you're meeting with your therapist every single week. Also weekly group sessions. And the group piece is super important for DBT.
The most important, honestly.
I would agree. Not that individual's not helpful, but when you're in a group, like you're learning from other people's experiences, resources that they've used, and also accountability. Mm-hmm. It's kind of hard to be truly accountable individually with your therapist if your therapist isn't kind of picking up on all the other little things that maybe you've said or done. So this way the group knows all. So the is going to kind of bring it to your attention. And that third important piece is telephonic crisis calls. And when you do a true program, a standard program, like you're given like these little cards and you fill them out whenever a crisis happens. And then you're doing these kind of crisis calls with your therapist and they're helping you work through the DBT steps, but it's just giving you that extra layer of reassurance, validation. Yes, you're on the right track. Have you tried this? And you're doing that for about 6 months to a year.
There's a reason for that. I took DBT through U of M, and I only did group. I had my own psychotherapist that I was using at the time, and so they just left me with my counselor, Dave, and I then did my group therapy through U of M, and it was like getting the information by a fire hose.
Yeah.
It was like trying to drink from a fire hose.
This is a ton of information.
It was, and I was just like, "Ah!" And so I took the course again. And the second time was getting it more from like the hose. The hose was on full force, but I could drink from it that time. Some of it started to actually sink in, and it sank in ways that I could then implement them in real life situations. And that's what the three-pronged approach helps you do that just doing group doesn't do, or just doing individual therapy and talking about dialectical skills doesn't do. You really do need all three to truly have it, to have the mastery and have it get the most efficacy. But that doesn't mean that you can't get benefit from doing any type of dialectical behavioral therapy.
For sure.
And so that was what I found, was that it helped me in a great many ways. And one of the things that I found amusing, it's in this book that she says that Martha says to her at some point, somebody said to her, "Aren't these the skills your mother was supposed to teach you?" And that was the experience I had. I remember having a group where I had to mute myself, shut off the camera, and scream. Like, what the fuck? Why did I learn? And I cried. I was very angry and upset that I hadn't learned some of the things that I learned in here that are things that other people who have regulated parents, who had easier childhoods, they just learned it. And people who go through the kind of trauma that I did, and there are a lot of us out there, let's be clear, I'm not in a minority. There are a lot of us out there who just didn't get the skills, either because our parents didn't know, they didn't have the time to teach us, or they didn't have the inclination. So it was a combination of those things, but it does work best when you have that group and individual session combined with the phone accountability. I would say that to do it and get any kind of efficacy, you have to at least do the group sessions. Absolutely. So whether it's online, and I did all mine online, I didn't do them in person because it was COVID. I think in person is probably it might feel a little more personable to people. So you might be able to create a bond a little easier with the group, but we were able to create a bond just fine. We were together 16 weeks, 2 times.
Yeah.
So I spent a good portion of my year in there.
Absolutely.
But it brought me to a lot of the things that DBT kind of taught me. Was it gives you guidelines for skills training. It gives you skills training for assumptions, and it teaches you about the biosocial theory and emotional behavioral dysregulation.
That's a lot of big words.
I know, which is why we're going to kind of talk about them, because what I really I didn't get into the biosocial stuff, but I did get into the skills training assumption. And the reason that I did is because there were a couple of things in it that like blew my mind, that I was like, oh, and it took me a while to wrap my brain around it. Like, people are doing the best they can. All people at any given point and time are doing the best they can. And I was like, oh, fuck that, my rapist wasn't doing the best they can. Right. But when you think about it, and I think about myself in my worst situation, when I made a terrible mistake or I hurt somebody terribly.
Sure.
Did I do it deliberately, or was I really doing the best I can with the knowledge that I had and the skills that I had in front of me, and maybe the dysfunction that I grew up with and the mental health shortcomings that I was dealing with without resources to help me deal with all of those? And when you put all of those factors together, and that's kind of what DBT is trying to help you learn, is that there's so many factors that combine into it. It's not just one thing. It teaches you that people want to improve, and I believe that. I think that in general, people want to improve. Whether they feel capable or not is different. And that's not what DBT is talking about. You have to be able to separate them. it also tells you that people need to do better and try harder and be more motivated to change. Right? And it's one of those like both things can be true type things. And that's where I was like, oh, okay. And that we may not have caused all our own problems, but that we have to solve them anyway. Because we're in control of our bodies and we're in control of our mind and our emotions.
Yes.
There's a few other things, new behavior has to be learned in all relevant contexts and a few other things that it gets into, but just those few things were concepts for me to sit and like chew on for a while before I could even move forward with DBT and be like, okay, because not only did I have to give that grace to myself, I had to give them to the people who hurt me.
Yeah.
But it also allowed me to begin on a path to healing that I didn't expect, because I am able to forgive somebody who has gone through their own terrible journey where they learned how to do that to me. It doesn't mean that I have to forget about it. It doesn't mean that I have to say, oh, we're cool now. It's all good. I forgive you and we're going to be best friends.
Right.
It means that I can understand why you did that and I can make peace with it and move on and not let it eat up my soul.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Absolutely. Choosing to be able to kind of to stop carrying that inside of you.
Right.
Forgiving that maybe, like, even though it's fucked up, they were doing the best that they can. I don't have to keep carrying that pain. I can let that go in order for me to be the best person going forward.
That's correct.
Yep.
That's absolutely correct. And it's a hard concept when you're in a place of deep pain to be able to accept those.
Oh, 100%.
So if you're not in a place where you can, again, be open to these broad concepts and also be ready for self-accountability, then DBT is not going to be ready. You're not ready for it yet.
Sure.
And it's okay. That's okay. It's okay to not be ready for it. There are certain other things like mindfulness you can be ready for in DBT, but like some of these other concepts, the class in and of itself, the course, I should say, in and of itself, I think you'll end up fighting the concepts more than you will opening yourself up to the possibilities of them, and taking any of them in is like, maybe this is possible. Maybe it could change my life if I accept this as true. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I liked about it was that it showed me chain analysis, and I'll kind of put it up here for people to see. That's a flow chart, and it's one of the things that, like, when you're talking about your behavior and how you react to things, DBT helped break down how something that I interacted with hours, days, weeks, months, years before might have been a catalyst to why I reacted to something today now. Mm-hmm. And it helped me understand the prompting event, vulnerability factors, links, and consequences. Without being able to have that concept in front of me, it would have been very hard for me to accept that some of my past trauma was part of why I was having problematic behaviors today.
That makes sense.
So I think that's one of the reasons that I brought it up, was because for me, it allowed me to not only experience that, but then there were things like in my class, I remember just to have it explained to me, we talked about like our vulnerability was our abusive childhood, but my prompting event might be that I just missed an appointment, right? That's the prompting event. I missed a doctor's appointment. That'll stress you out. I've had an abusive childhood. Now, because of that abusive childhood, that means that I have a nervous system that is more hyperactive.
Yes.
And more hypersensitive.
Yes.
So after I miss this appointment, I'm stressed out. And after I'm stressed out, I lose my keys, which is going to stress me out even more. And then after I lose my keys, I drop my water. I carry this giant water bottle, and I drop this water, spill the water everywhere. Now I'm really upset, and I turn around and stub my toe. Then my husband walks in the door and goes, "Hi, honey, how you doing?" And I just lose my shit at him. Did he do anything? No. But I could never understand, like, why? Why couldn't I stop myself?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I started seeing the chain analysis and started understanding those prompting events, those links, those vulnerability factors, and I started realizing that the consequences, if I yell at Keith, then of course he's going to feel like shit. I'm going to feel like shit. I'm going to have to sit and apologize. I'm going to have to go through the whole apology tour and explain to him why I'm feeling the way that versus him walking in the door and me going, oh my God, I'm having the worst day. I need 5 minutes, please.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not saying that this stuff is easy. It was the practice of doing dialectical behavioral therapy, doing these dialectical techniques that have now allowed me to do that. That when he walks in, this whole chain could happen now still. And he walks in the door and I go, no, can't communicate, need 5, please. And he'll give me 5 minutes and then I'll come over and be like, oh my guys, and I'll have a huge bruise or whatever because I've hurt myself. He knows that I've hurt myself. And he's like, we'll have a whole conversation about it. And he's so appreciative that I gave him that, not only the warning that I've been hurt, so he can plan he's going to get me an ice pack. He's going to do, because he loves me. And he's also recognized the same pattern happens to him too, but in different ways.
Yeah.
Because he had his own traumas and stuff too. So, he might freak out at me for something because he hasn't eaten and because he got stressed out at work and then he had a shitty client, whatever. And I just came up to check the shrimps that are up in his room. And, and not that he is a freaker outer really, but you know what I'm saying. But get a little snappy with me and then not realize, be like, I don't know why I was like that. And that's me being able to explain it for myself allows me to be able to explain it for him too. And then he's like, oh, okay. That's helpful. It's helpful when you can give your partner some clues as to why they might be reacting the way that they are if they haven't had it explained to them.
Absolutely.
So that was something that I found to be super helpful. Missing links, when you don't know what to do, they kind of break that down for you in here. If you really don't know what to do in a situation, they'll give you step by step. Like how to reduce your suffering and increase happiness, how to increase control of your mind, experience reality as it is. They'll break it down step by step for you. So that's kind of when we get into the next module, the module of mindfulness. You and I have talked about mindfulness a lot. We talked about meditating, but we've also talked about that there's other ways of achieving mindfulness. We've talked about the reasonable mind, the motion mind, the wise mind. We've talked about that in past podcasts.
Yeah.
And that's something that they bring up a lot in this book because there are so many ways to achieve mindfulness if you're willing to step outside of what you know. And they teach a lot of different skills, but, they just did things like they had imagine that you're a clear blue lake on a beautiful sunny day and that you are a small flake of stone, flat and light. And it's doing a lot of imagery. Some people can't get into this stuff, but some people who are more able to do some of that imagery stuff, this could be very relaxing and calming if you're listening some real soft music, sitting there thinking about that, or thinking about just walking down a spiral stairs. Just imagine yourself walking down a spiral stairs, going downwards. That can be, it sends the image to your brain of a calming sensation going down.
Yes.
And it also helps you it sends the imagery of getting down to the root of things. So it's that mindfulness can also send imagery. Asking yourself wise-minded questions. Is this going to be helpful for me? Is this what I want to do?
Yeah.
These are the things that I had to learn step by step because for me, I was taught to just be reactive. Like you feel something, then you react on it. And then other people just have to deal with that. That's how I grew up. You witnessed that more than once.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, when you grow up with caregivers that treat you that way, you learn that you think that that's normal. And until you start getting around other people who are gently going to be like, hey, here's a different way, versus just freaking out and leaving, and you go, I don't know what I did. Because that's what happened for a long time for me. I didn't understand what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
So that's why I think mindfulness was super helpful for me, was just being able to get down to the bottom of what my body was feeling.
Did they ever have you practice mindfulness eating?
Eating a strawberry slowly and tasting,
or raisin, things of that nature.
And we did a strawberry, if I remember correctly, that's what I did. And it was, tasting the seed, like licking the outside of it, feeling the nubbies on it, smelling it,
Yes.
engaging all of your senses before you ever taste it, really.
Which at first I thought was like super weird. Like, why
would I mind to listen to a strawberry?
And I'm like, this is okay. Everybody else is doing it. So you're sniffing it. You're like all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
But then by the time like you eat it and like you're focusing on like how does it feel in your mouth? Like what tastes are you noticing? And then it's like, oh, I don't even know what I was thinking about before I started focusing on this little tiny raisin.
Yep.
But being able to incorporate mindfulness eating into at least one thing a day, whatever that thing is, just kind of helps kind of bring you back in and zone in on one specific thing that's enhancing and helping your body.
Well, and I think that mindful eating is one of those things that can really help you do that in a way that other mindful practices are a little more difficult. Because it engages all of your senses, and then you get a reward at the end. You get to taste the thing you like.
Sure.
When your moods and feelings and urges are in the driver's seat, then you're not being mindful. So if you are not comfortable with waiting, then you're probably not being mindful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can't wait to eat that strawberry, you're probably not, or that raisin or whatever it is, you're probably not in mindfulness. You're probably not hitting it yet. And that can be a real quick marker right there. Like, oh man, I couldn't even wait to get to listening to it. Even I know it's not going to make me, you still listen. You still listen to how it rolls in your finger.
Yeah.
Or, even if it makes no noise, but nothing makes no noise. It does something.
It does something, yeah.
Yeah. So, but you don't think about it that way. You go, I'm just going to make any noise. So, that's one of those things. Like, just doing those little mindful things, it gives you so many ways to practice wise mind in the book, in and of itself. But doing those little mindful things can help you get so in touch with your senses, all your senses, so that you can start to enjoy experiences more. It's not even about it's not just about healing and getting to a place of growth. Like, you can start to enjoy experiences more.
Being able to be fully present in something and just enjoying the whole experience, everything that you're hearing, smelling, tasting, everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just makes it makes you feel smaller in the grand scheme of things, but also in charge of yourself.
Correct.
At the same time.
I agree. Yes. I think I would agree with that. So, mindfulness in the book, I didn't get into a whole bunch of telling people what to do. They can get the book. That's what I would say. The one thing that it does tell you to take hold of your mind, your what skills: observe, describe, participate. Noticing body sensations, paying attention, controlling your attention, putting words on your experiences, labeling what you observe.
Yeah.
Becoming one with whatever you're doing, going with the flow. Those are some examples of this, but there's no way that I could get through everything in this book. So I'm just touching on little bits of it, and I hope that people who are interested will take time out and get this, and I think that you'll find, everybody can find something in here that will benefit them in some way. Let's see, where's my next piece? So next we go to interpersonal effectiveness. And interpersonal effectiveness talks about goals, skills, and getting what you want and need from others, building healthy relationships, and ending destructive ones.
This one's huge.
It is.
Pretty much everybody.
It is.
Everybody across the board.
I feel like this should be taught at jobs. It should be taught. And it should be started young, but for me, emotion regulation and stress tolerance are the ones that we should be starting in kindergarten. And then as we get older, the interpersonal effectiveness is where you're going to be bringing that in. Mindfulness should have been started from baby, honestly.
Oh, absolutely.
But with interpersonal effectiveness, you're trying to walk the middle path. You're not trying to be in emotion mind or reason mind. You're trying to be in wise mind. And it gives you easy ways in this book to clarify your goals. So if you don't know what it is that you're trying to accomplish, this book will literally give you guidelines to help you figure them out. And then it gives you things like how to interact with other people. So there's, and you know how much I love the acronyms. So
She does.
I
You all
do.
know this by now. She
We
loves
know
her
I love the
acronyms.
acronyms. And they have some in here. One of them is Dear Man. And Dear Man is something that people who get into therapy, when you know the basics, a lot of times I'll hear it in group sessions and stuff. They'll go, well, what skills do you? Everybody will go, oh, I use Dear Man. They're like, oh, what does it mean? Well, I mean, it's about a man, right? Like, and he's dear to me. They don't really know what it means. So the dear part is you're going to describe the situation, stick to the facts. Don't go off on a tangents.
Yep.
You told me you'd be home by dinner, but you didn't get here until 11. E, express your feelings and opinions about the situation. You can't assume that somebody else knows what you feel. You use phrases such as I want instead of you should.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want instead of you shouldn't. I want you to be home to enjoy dinner with me. I don't want to have dinner alone. Asserting yourself by asking for what you want or saying no clearly. You have to remember that others can't read your mind. I'd really like it if you would call me when you're going to be late. And then you reinforce or reward the person ahead of time, so to speak. And you do this by and I've used this so many times. You tell the person why they should do the thing, because if you do this, I'm not going to get upset. We're not going to get into an argument. If you let me know that you're not going to be home by the time you said, I'm not going to get mad and we're not going to fight. Just those kinds of things. Just dear alone. You don't even have to get to man. Just dear alone can help you with interpersonal effectiveness, with just speaking to your partner or your friends. Mm-hmm. And I've used it with my partner, my friends, my children, my doctors, because I didn't have great communication skills for a long time. When you get into man, mindful, you appear like a broken record. You just keep repeating your position. If somebody's arguing with you, you keep saying, but I asked you to be home by dinner, and you said you would.
Right.
And you weren't. So I asked you, I would still like a call. I asked you to be home by dinner. I would still like a call.
Because then you're not allowing yourself to get caught up in whatever they're going through, like you're focusing on what you mentioned in the beginning, the facts of the information and what you've explicitly laid out to them. And
doing it gracefully and regularly is hard.
Like, I don't want to be a dick.
I mean, you just heard me say, you said you weren't. And then I had to recorrect and be like, wait. I said that I would like a call. It has to be about me. I said.
Yes.
My feelings. You can say, you promised you would be home by dinner. When you are not, it is upsetting for me.
Yes.
But you have to turn it back into my feelings. This is about for me. And if you don't want to upset me, then it's something we have to talk about.
Right.
If you're not able to be home, I just need to know. I'm not demanding that you come home at X time.
Right.
When you lock into those rigidities, that's when you're going to start to have, you're not going to be able, you've got to be able to go with the flow. And that comes up later that they bring that up. But the other thing, when you're asking for something, you have to make sure that you can appear confident and competent. That's really hard for people. Just do the best you can.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
You try not to say, I'm sure, I'm not sure. You try not to stammer, whisper, things like those. Practice. Do it in front of a mirror. Do it with a friend. Practice it a few times. Get your speech down. Get your verbiage down. Get down what you want to say. Make sure you stick to that. Again, don't go off on tangents. Just because a feeling comes up and you're like, oh, that's a great point, doesn't mean you have to add it in.
And that's super hard because you have to be patient with yourself.
Yes.
And just focus on what you're going to say and not want to react to what you're going to feel.
Right. And you can make mistakes. People who are well skilled at this make mistakes. People who are practice and teach this make mistakes. So don't shit on yourself if you make a mistake. And then the last part is negotiate. Be willing to give to get.
Yeah. Which is huge.
Yeah.
For sure.
So Dear Man is one of those that I use pretty frequently. I find it to be super helpful in so many different aspects of my life. And it's something that I will continue to suggest to people, but not as like, oh yeah, I use Dear Man. Like, I really like to try and describe it. Do you want to know what it is? And describe what it is for people who are interested. For those who, I just don't get into it then. Let's see, where are we at now? What do you got to say, Natalie?
Ironically enough, well, as everybody's listening, you realize Joanna's talking a lot.
Yeah.
Not because I don't know anything about dialectical behavioral therapy, but it's not something that like I strictly use. I haven't been like solidly trained in it. Like I wouldn't say I'm a DBT therapist because that would be a lie. I'm not. But as you're talking, just like with CBT, when I said I'm not a CBT therapist, I do use so many of these things with my clients, and I'm like, oh, I use so many more different approaches than what I inherently give myself credit for.
Right.
Because I'm well-rounded. I'm an eclectical therapist. Like I pick and choose what's going to work best for you. I create your own recipe without saying, here's a piece I pulled from this. Here's a piece I pulled from this. So it's really cool. And it reminds me like, don't sell yourself short, meaning me, don't sell myself short on just the amount of information I do know, but then also what I do use with my clients and on myself.
Well, I remember I told you there was one part, I had a personal crisis like last week or something, and I messaged you, and you sent me back some dialectical questions.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, dialectical questions, and then when I told you today, I'm like, yeah, well, you did those dialectical questions. You go, oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, I definitely did that.
Yeah, I did that.
And I was like, yeah, but that's just because, like we said, DBT is pulled from so many different modalities.
For sure.
So if you're using EMDR a lot, but there's a lot of things at EMDR that she pulled from there, so, and DBT is one of the newer modalities, really, as far as like being packaged.
Yeah,
definitely
like more widely used for sure.
Sure, like a lot of the stuff that she uses in here, a lot of it's been around for a long time. People have been using it. It's things that people are familiar with from different types of therapies, modalities, but they've never been pulled together in this way before.
Right.
Before she did it. And that's kind of why I love this. She used Give Fast guidelines for relationship effectiveness. I didn't get into every single thing that she got into because we would be here for 7 hours on this podcast. So I just basically skimmed over the things that I thought would interest people enough that they were like, oh, maybe I should check that book out. And that's kind of where we're at with that. So one of the things that I do love about this book, page 140, we've talked about this before, like finding your tribe, finding people that are going to be your people to help you, your support team, your support system that's going to help you. And that may not be your family. Your family may be the ones who are actually part of the problem. So how do you find and get people to like you? Especially if you don't have a lot of these interpersonal effectiveness skills and you don't know how to interact with other people. Well, I'll tell you what, page 40, they got a whole guideline for you, and it's not just crap ideas. They have real ideas, real usable ideas in here. Look for people who are close by you. Look for groups. Join churches, join book club, join a pottery club. There's all kinds of different things. I found a lot of the people that I now consider to be some of my family by doing local community activism and organization that way. I wanted to make a change. I didn't think I could do it on a national level. I started doing it on a local level. I met local people, and two of my very best friends I've met that way. I've got, people that I have from high school that I consider to be my best friends, and then I've got these people that are in my lives on a regular daily basis that are checking in on me and bringing me food if I need it and calling me and like bringing me little gifts from their trip and stuff like that. It's a different level of friendship than the 35-year friendships that I have. And
For sure.
I developed these friendships based on some of the things that I learned in dialectical behavioral therapy. So, it's literally like a how to make friends guide, and it breaks it down. And then they get into how to end relationships, how to figure out which relationships are toxic and which aren't.
Which is important, because if it's not serving a purpose for you, it's not helping you grow, you to be your best you.
Yep.
Maybe it's time to rethink that relationship and who that person is in your life.
That's right. And we unfortunately we have a lot of people in our society that feel like, well, they're blood. That's your mother, that's your sister, that's your father, that's your so-and-so, that's so-and-so. And it doesn't matter what kind of damage they've done to you in their past to that person. Well, that's your family, that's your blood, that's what.
Right.
And I personally feel that your family are the people that are there lifting you up, supporting you, cheering you on, and loving you through your roughest, darkest times.
Yeah,
absolutely. And giving you grace to be that person, to make mistakes, to be broken, to be damaged, and to know that you're still on a path of growth. That's what I get from the people that I call my best friends. So, and that came from much more than DBT, but it was thanks to this that it allowed me to look at those friendships in different ways.
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for it. And I like that they then continue on, like thinking and acting dialectically. The ability to view the situation from multiple perspectives and arrive at the most economical and reasonable reconciliation of seemingly contradictory information and positions. Such big words. Basically,
It's a lot.
You want to be able to see all sides of the picture
Mm-hmm.
and be able to understand their perspective, even if you don't agree with it. I can understand where you're coming from. That helps a lot, especially in this divisive times that we have. People with different ideologies, different political views.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to agree. You and I have some differences. But I respect your opinion. You respect my opinion. We never get into arguments about it.
Yeah.
It's so easy to be able to do that. A lot of that comes from, though, being able to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Think about their position and their perspective. And if you're only stuck in where you're at, what your feelings are, what your position is, what your perspective is, you're not thinking dialectically.
No, not even a little bit.
No. So it's important to recognize that you have to have both sides. Opposites balance each other. You would not know what joy is had you never experienced pain, and vice versa.
Yep.
There would just be an even contentment. That is why we have the yin and the yang and the opposites that there are. And it teaches you in here, too, how to validate. Validation is super important. And I'm not talking about how to validate other people, because a lot of times people who have that's my foot, that's what did it. A lot of times people who have trauma, they're able to validate other people. They can't validate themselves or accept validation.
Yes.
So it's important to be able to understand what validation means, why validation is important, the important things to validate, which are not just other people, but facts, situations, people's emotions, their experiences.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with it or not, validate it.
Absolutely.
And do the same thing for yourself, too.
Because if you're willing to do it for somebody else, same thing with grace,
Yep.
same thing with patience, same thing with forgiveness. You're willing to give it to somebody else. Why are you struggling with giving it to yourself?
Why are they more deserving of it than you are?
Exactly.
And can you dialectically answer that in a truthful way and still come up with, yes, they deserve it more? Because I challenge you that you cannot.
Right.
Because value is value, and all people have the same value. That's something that I had to come to terms with real hard in my therapy, was that my abuser is going to have the same inherent value as a human being, than I do.
Yes. Yes.
That was real hard for me to wrap my head around, but human beings are human beings, and that's where we have to recognize that if we're going to start invalidating people off of their actions, then it's pretty easy for that to happen to us too. For someone to decide that they're going to invalidate us because we've done something.
Yep.
So, let's see, where are we at next? Like I said, clunky. It's okay. Strategies for decreasing and stopping unwanted behaviors. Man, did I need that years ago. I can't tell you what a difference it makes to be able to have something where it's like, it gives you actual things, it lays out situations, it lays out examples, it gives you worksheets. So you can sit down. I would have situations that would come up, and I would have a situation that would cause me to be triggered or something, and I would have an unwanted behavior come up, and I would literally go to this book and sit down and do a worksheet. And
I think you mentioned this
yeah,
however many sessions ago. Like I had to pull out my DBT worksheet and I had to do that worksheet.
Yeah, sometimes that's just what I have to do. Like I think that was CPT that I was doing, but they're both worksheets.
Okay, gotcha.
And sometimes like just pulling out that worksheet and sitting down and like getting out of my own headspace and just writing it out.
Yes.
It's kind of like journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And you're working it out, but you're also getting tips and little tricks in from this book that you would have never thought of or might not know about. So it can be really soothing and cathartic to have that, and now you don't feel as like you're flailing around as much. You know, it's like, oh, there's some answers. I can find something here. I can flip to emotion regulation or distress tolerance or whatever, and go through the table of contents in the back, the index, and then find anything in it, body chemistry or communication reinforcement or whatever I want to, and find not only a little worksheet on it, but also some tips and tricks that help me do that worksheet.
Yeah.
So it's just something, that's why I wanted to do something on this book instead of, because this is how I learned with DBT. This is how I continue to hold myself accountable in DBT.
Because you still use all of these today.
I do. I do still use all of these today, and I still use this book on a regular basis. I keep it downstairs by my bed, by my fireplace, by my little chaise table there. And if I'm struggling with, like in this next part, naming an emotion, for instance, I go to page 214. And in page 214, it starts with this whole list of sheets on ways to name emotions. And what it starts with is anger words. And then it lists off a whole bunch of different words: indignation, rage, vengefulness, hostility, frustration. Because I'll say, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated.
Still under the anger realm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not able to recognize that, then how are you able to even process the emotion?
True. Very true.
So, and it wasn't until I got into this class that I was like, oh, okay, all right, maybe I got to hold myself a little more accountable on some of this stuff. Just having that alone, I mean, I would get the book just for that, just to be able to name my emotions in times where I couldn't label what I was feeling, especially going through trauma therapy, when you're trying to just label what it is you're feeling, and you're like, I don't know, it kind of feels like this, but
yeah, you get stuck trying to figure out like what that emotion is and trying to describe it.
Yep.
And sometimes you don't have the right word, but you know kind of what it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's where you'll have
Super
those other words like, I'm frustrated instead of angry, or whatever, envy words or jealousy words or whatever. So I really like that they lay that out for you. And then the next part they take you to that I really liked was just changing emotional responses. They tell you to check the facts, to use opposite action, and problem solving. Opposite action is one of my favorite things, and it was one of the hardest for me to start doing. Opposite action is like, I want to go eat my feelings. So instead, I'm going to go for a walk. So you do the opposite of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I want to yell and scream about this, so instead I'm going to go journal. And you do the opposite of what it is that you really have the desire to do. I want to break something. So instead, I'm going to go paint.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to go cook. I'm going to go create something. You do the opposite. And it really sends that message to your brain of like, we're not indulging in this. And also there are other alternatives that are the complete opposite of what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And your brain's like, wait, what? Wait, I'm so confused. But it just, it's amazing the opportunities that it allows you then for emotional growth.
Then it just allows you to kind of slow down enough while you're doing the opposite thing, to slow down enough to really understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? Like, why are my emotions going this way? Why do I want to fight this? Why do I want to scream at them? Whatever it is, you're doing something opposite, so it allows you to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
You're having to be mindful to whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're painting, you're cooking, you're going for a run, whatever the case is. But then in the background, just like with other things, like your brain's still trying to process the information and trying to figure it out so that the rest of it kind of gets on board like, oh, okay, that makes sense now. Now
Right.
I know why I wanted to do that. So I'm glad instead I did this, because had I chose to do that, the consequences would not be near as fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And they help you with even breaking down like how to check the facts. And it's 6 steps. What emotion do I want to change? What is the prompting event for my emotion?
Mm-hmm.
What are my interpretations, thoughts, and assumptions? And am I assuming a threat? Ask, what's the catastrophe?
Right.
What is the worst thing that's going to happen here? And does my emotion and or the intensity fit the actual facts? Number 6 is huge. For me, that's a huge one. I often have to check the intensity of my emotions because I will get very sad or very upset about something that does not correlate to what the actual situation is. And I'll have to sit and think about like, Joanna, you're upset because your physical was canceled and it was moved out 3 months. And yes, it's going to change your paperwork and stuff, but like you still have heat and you've got electricity and you're healthy and ish. And you've got food and you've got friends and doing those things, like checking the facts, like, is it worth a 5-minute cry? Did somebody die or is this an inconvenience?
Right.
So, and some of this stuff to people who haven't gone through childhood trauma, this is going to sound ridiculous to some of you, and I get that. That's okay. When you have not had the kind of support that you need from a young age, and the emotion regulation, and learning distress tolerance, and then you get to be an adult, and you're walking around, and you're trying to, and you've got big emotions now, and you're trying to figure out, and now you're a big person who's having those temper tantrums that the 2 or 3-year-old should have learned how to calm, but they didn't, because nobody taught them. Those are the people who need these classes, and that was me. So that's why I get it. I am not ashamed at all to say I was that way once, and I worked really hard to not be that way now. Mm-hmm. I give examples often, and I'm hyperbolic sometimes when I give my examples because I'm not that way now, but it shows people like what it could be like, or, sometimes it is the truth though. Sometimes I do freak out for nothing. So, problem solving. That's another thing in emotion regulation that they lay out for you that I really love. Helping you figure out how to problem solve, they lay out all the steps for you and then give you options on how to do it.
Yeah.
So it's not just like, hey, here's the steps, figure it out. They literally give you the options for it. And then they take you into, okay, now we want to help you reduce vulnerabilities to an emotional mind. We want to help you build a life worth living. So we're going to teach you ABC, please. And then they talk about accumulating positive emotions, building mastery, coping ahead of time with emotional situations. And then please is treat physical illness, balancing eating, avoid mood-altering substance, balance sleep, and get exercise. Okay, now I feel like getting please out of that is a stretch. That's just my own personal feelings on that. But I understand why they made the acronym that way, and I'll give it to them. I also have my own feelings about mood-altering substances. I use marijuana. I use medical marijuana to sometimes deal with my anxiety. I think people have seen me sometimes use it during podcasts. I use it sometimes to be able to just get my emotions a little bit more calm, a little bit less intense, is what I should say, a little bit less intense.
Yeah.
What I don't do is use it to run away from my emotions. I do not self-medicate in order to suppress, run away from, or hide my emotions. I use it enough so that I am able to then address them in a healthy way without running away from them or hiding them. So, and all of my doctors are aware of what I use. They're comfortable with it. They don't have a problem with it. I don't use any other mood-altering substances besides my prescription drugs.
Mm-hmm.
There are other people that really like mushrooms for microdosing and stuff. I've tried mushrooms, but it's not something that I use as a regular thing. There are people that really like it for mental health treatment, and I know that there are great things about the studies that have come out from it. So I have my own feelings about mood-altering substances, and I don't feel like it's something that it can be used as a blanket statement that you should just avoid them 100% for every person. So that's just my statement on that. But ABC Please is helpful, I think, and it gives, again, lists of options on how to do it. It helps you define values and priorities too. I think that's super important.
In case you forgot, like this book has literally step by step by step. Like it's not just saying a picture and says ABC Please. Like it's giving you various steps of things for how to go about doing things.
Right.
There's just so much information in this book because it's doing that for you instead of it's taking the guesswork out of what you can do and giving you those tips and tricks and steps along the way.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what's happening. I'm taking your keyword now, just so you know.
Don't be taking absolutely.
It's mine now. I'm taking it.
You know?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It even has a nightmare protocol in here. When nightmares keep you from sleeping, what to do step by step. It's got sleep hygiene protocol. When you can't sleep, what to do instead of ruminating. That's the title of it. When you can't sleep, what to do instead of ruminating. And then it's got, can you see the writing on here? I wish everybody could see it because I know that there's a lot of our listeners, but it has on here 14 steps on this one page, and it's very tiny writing.
Very tiny writing.
They have a lot of information in here that they just give you to help you with sleep. And that's above and beyond, like the mindfulness, doing all of the things that we've already talked about are going to help with these things as well.
Oh,
but
for
then
sure.
Above and beyond, they're like, hey, and also there's a nightmare protocol and there's a sleep protocol. So and then they get into troubleshooting emotion regulation when what you're doing isn't working. And they give you 6 steps to go through. They break it down step by step. So that if you're trying to manage extreme emotions and it's not working, and I'm just going to list them off, they're much more in depth. Check your biology. Eaten, taking my meds, am I sick? Check your skills. Have I tried any? Have I tried any coaching? Check for reinforcers. Practice interpersonal effectiveness. Self-validate. There's a pros and cons worksheet on page 271 that can help with that. It says check your mood. Am I putting in the time and effort to solve the problem that solving the problem will take? Am I trying to rush through this? Because sometimes we try and rush through it like, I just want to get this done.
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience.
Slow is fast. Sometimes slow is fast.
Yes.
Check your emotional overload. Am I too upset right now? Because sometimes you're just too upset to deal with it and you got to walk away. Check the emotional myths getting in the way. Is there judgment getting in the way? Check facts and myths and practice thinking non-judgmentally. And then gives a review of skills for emotion regulation on page 268. And on 287, figuring out unwanted emotions chart, which I always found that to be like super helpful. It's another flow chart, and it's got like a box. Ask this. Yes? No. do this, yes, no. And then at the bottom, it has like, if you got this, do this worksheet on this page. If you got this, do this worksheet on this page. It does. They never leave you flailing. They never leave you like, okay, but what do I do? But what page do I go to? But what next?
How do I get rid of this unwanted feeling? Just follow the flow chart, do the worksheet.
Yep, and on the back is a worksheet for it. But they just constantly are trying to give you some sort of skill or technique or tip and then tie it into another.
Yes.
So that they're all interlinked, which is why the 4 are in here. So that's basically the end of our, what was the last one? What did we just do? Emotion regulation? Yeah, emotion regulation, because now we're into distress tolerance. Distress tolerance is the other one. The emotion regulation and distress tolerance, I feel like they should be just taught in kindergarten from then on, and we should just keep giving kids refreshers. If we did these 2 things, mindfulness and interpersonal effectiveness would come along with it.
Oh, for sure. Because they can use this so much in elementary schools, middle schools, high schools.
Yeah.
If kids are taught these things, then being able to kind of just go over and being like, hey, Joanna, why don't you go and fill out this worksheet in the hall? Mm-hmm. Ready? Come on back in. Like, instead of go to the principal's office, you guys attention, or shaming you in front of all of your peers, because that's the best way to teach us how to feel good about ourselves.
It helps bullying so much.
Oh my God, so much. So much.
Yeah, the first thing they talk about is actually STOP, which again, another acronym. Mm-hmm. And STOP is one of the easiest ones. Everybody can do the STOP skill. Everybody can do the STOP skill in any high stress, emotionally intense situation. Because it's literally stop, take a break, observe the situation, and proceed mindfully. That sounds very simple. They break it then down even more for you in here. So you don't even have to go, okay, but what does proceed mindfully mean?
Right.
What am I observing? Mm-hmm. Like, they break it down for you, and then they give you tips on how to do that. And one of them is TIP, which it talks about changing the temperature of your body, using intense exercise, paced breathing, using those skills. Somatic skills that actually affect your body.
Yes.
Skills that make your body, and there's to remember, breathing is one of the only things that your autonomic nervous system can control, and you can actually control yourself.
Yes.
So it's one of those things where it sends a message to your brain like, hey, we're controlling our breathing, even though our brain wants us to freak out, we're controlling it. Mm-hmm. And that makes a huge difference in getting your brain to understand messaging. When you just start that breathing, you don't even have to do anything else. Your brain can be like, wait, we're calming down.
Yes.
We're calming down. Okay. Intense exercising. You're down there doing some intense exercising. Your brain has to shift from its emotions to what it's going to do now to help your body get through this exercise that you're going through.
Right. So I've told a lot of clients that when you start to have a lot of anxiety, do jumping jacks, do push-ups, something, because your brain cannot freak out at the same time that your body's involved in physical exercise.
Yep.
And in order to calm your breathing down, butterfly hug, which we talked about last session, like being able to just, because you don't want your breathing to be fast and rapid, you want it to be nice and slow and those long, deep breaths, because then you're in charge of your body.
Right. And I personally have grabbed a washcloth and gotten it all cold and just put a cold washcloth on my face and just change the temperature of my body that way. Just giving myself, or put my tip, they tell you to stick your face in a bowl of ice water. That's one of the and they had us try it in DBT. You had to go and try it.
That's brisk.
Yeah, it was brisk, but brisk. I was like, yeah, I get it. I see how it would shock you right on anything.
Yes.
And I did use it after when I was going through something. It was after I'd lost my dad, and I was going through like a crisis of just like missing him and couldn't get out of it, and there was nobody around and nobody to calm me down. I tried calling like 3 people, couldn't reach anybody, couldn't hold the pen to journal. I just got a bowl of cold water, stuck my face in it.
Right.
And it shorted everything out and like got me to, okay. And then I was able to sit down and start breathing and using some of the other skills that were more mindful. So, I mean, but I wouldn't have known that had I not learned it from DBT.
And again, it's in the book.
It's in the book.
It's on the worksheet.
It's in the book. They talk about willingness, finding a willing response to situations. Willingness is doing just what is needed. Willingness sucks. It's something that you just have to learn how to get along. Like it's like radical acceptance. It's half smile and willing hands. Like it's when you're just feeling crappy. Like half smile and willing hands is literally like you're feeling like shit about a situation and you just go, and it sounds stupid, but it sends a message to your brain because your brain goes, why are we smiling?
Right.
Why are our hands open? Wait, maybe we don't feel the way we feel because brains are dumb. Like they're smart, but they're dumb. Brains are not you. Brains are an organ. They're not you. So, but half smile, willing hands, those were some of the things that I was like, I don't know about all this shit. Radical acceptance is one thing that I've had to, that's been something that I've come to, and that's where you hate the situation and you just go, okay, this is how it is. I do not want to go to therapy today. I feel like shit. I do not want to go to therapy today, but it's going to make me feel better. So I'm going to go.
Yes.
And I'm going to radically accept that it's going to make me feel better. And I'm going to go, even though I do not want to go.
Yes.
It's things like, I don't want to pay taxes, but I have to, so I'm going to.
Mm-hmm.
You radically accept that you have to do these things that you don't like.
Yeah.
And allowing the mindfulness of current thoughts. Actively practicing mindful thoughts, self-praise, observe, adopt curiosity. Remember that our thoughts are not ourselves, but we should not block or suppress them. They help lead us to other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and a lot of times when you're in session with your therapist or even your counselor, and you're kind of like, oh, I have this problem, and I've been thinking about this. Like, you can literally solve your own problem just by having that other person there that's not necessarily interjecting any feedback, that's not jumping on your bandwagon, that's not interrupting you, that allows you to get to the point. And I've had clients be like, man, you didn't say much today, but that was so helpful.
Yep.
I'm like, you're welcome. Because at this point, like, you're starting to work through your own stuff outside of yourself. And
right.
That's where a lot of the best work happens. When you're doing it outside of yourself, you're communicating it to another person instead of trying to just communicate it all by yourself in your brain, because then you're going to get twisted up,
yep.
turn around backwards, and you forgot what hall you went down.
Right. Right. And when you're communicating it to another person too, like you can hear as the thoughts are coming out, and it will, and then it'll,
yes.
oh, well but I didn't think of this thing. Oh, that.
Yes.
And you'll also get feedback back sometimes too. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't, but you might get a little bit of feedback back. And that's one of the things, like they talk about, observe your thoughts, adopt a curious mind, remember you're not your thoughts, don't block or suppress your thoughts. Doing that for yourself or in your sessions with your therapist, doing it with your friends. This is dialectical thinking.
Yes.
Like that's kind of what we're talking about, that is the essence of it. It's mindfulness of current thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
They talk about in here, let me see which page it's on. Yeah, it's on this page. Dialectical abstinence. Abstinence versus harm reduction. And the reason that I bring this up is because it's the last portion. I didn't actually deal with this in my class, but it's about addiction.
Yeah.
And that's because DBT has been found to be incredibly beneficial for people with addiction because it deals with behavior.
Yes.
And although addiction is talked about as a disease, it also has a lot to do with behavior and choices. So they talk about dialectical abstinence, choosing to abstain, that there is clear mind versus clean mind, or addict mind versus clean mind, and then you want to get to clear mind, which is very similar to wise mind.
Yes.
But it's used more in this state for people who are having trouble with substance abuse. burning bridges, unhealthy ones, and building new ones. That's a big focus in the addictive portion of dialectical behavior, because when you go through substance abuse recovery, there are going to be a lot of relationships you are going to have to let go of. That just comes as a natural part of it.
Yeah.
And then alternate rebellion, figuring out other ways to rebel besides substances. They talk about adaptive denial too, deny the desire for the craving or addiction or behavior by telling the brain you want something else, and delay the addiction, even for 5 minutes. They use that a lot with smoking too, but this stuff can be used. People think about addiction and they think, oh, well, this is for drugs, this is for sex, that's for gambling, but this can be used for food addiction, for shopping, for social media, for gaming, for any type of addiction.
Any type of addiction.
Anything that if you're addicted to working and you find that you can't break those patterns, you can use it for this too. So that's why I wanted to talk about that. Even though I didn't personally deal with it, I still think that it's something that can be super helpful. And that was the end of it. Then we got back to our title.
And the group that I did co-facilitate way back when, our group was as part of an intensive outpatient program that the agency I worked for at that time did for substance users only, so drugs, alcohol. So a lot of the stuff that we would talk about and that we would practice and that we would work on with the group was related to their drug and alcohol addiction. But again, it's not just specific.
Nope.
It can be used for any kind of addiction. And addiction is something that if you are doing this unconsciously, not unconsciously, subconsciously, it can be unconscious. Well, you can be unconscious to do stuff. Really subconsciously. You're not intentionally doing it, but it's impacting your job. It's impacting your marriage. It's impacting your child rearing. It's impacting your daily grocery shopping. Like, it is, you're doing whatever this is and finding ways to do whatever this is all of the time. So then this becomes an addiction because you cannot stop what you're doing because you've now done it for so long. So now how do we undo those behaviors? How do we unlearn those behaviors? By paying more attention to them, by becoming more mindful.
Right.
By sharing what kind of emotions that we're feeling when we're having them, what emotions are leading up to us having them. How do we kind of calm that storm down on the inside?
Right. Well, I mean, we've talked so much about how emotions are messengers. There are not good or bad emotions.
Right.
There are emotions that feel good and feel bad.
Yes.
But emotions are always there, literally just messengers trying to tell you something that your body perceives that it needs. Doesn't always need it, but your body perceives that it needs, and it is using an emotion to try and tell you that it needs something from you.
Mm-hmm.
DBT can help you drill down to what that need is by identifying what the emotion is, and then helping you regulate that emotion, and you can start to notice patterns of behavior. You start to notice patterns with other people.
Yeah.
You start to notice patterns in your own life of what you're doing and how you're interacting with other people. Things that, one of the things that I really got out of was saying a lot of like, you're making me feel a certain way. Like, and not that I never say it, but I try and say, I'll backtrack and say, I'm sorry, you can't make me feel any way, but I am feeling this way as a result. Here's your actions, here's my responsibility. There's times where I might be feeling a certain way and it's totally a me problem. It might be in response to what somebody else is doing, but it's not a them problem, it's a me problem.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's not that they're making me feel a certain way. It's that my emotions are trying to tell me that I had a need or that there's something that's going on and I need to pay attention to what they are saying to me. Mm-hmm. And when I sit down with them calmly and quietly and not argue, we don't get into a pissing match over who's right.
Right. Because at the end of the day, you both are.
Because sometimes I'm like, I'm not mad, I'm this. And then it's like, okay, but really, you're mad.
Yeah.
So, I'm not trying to get attention. I'm trying to get this. And it's like, but really, it is this.
Yeah.
And that's where we've said before, like, dialectical behavioral therapy does take a lot of self-accountability. If you're going to do the program, you can do portions of this and you don't have to have that. But for the program, it does take self-accountability. You have to be willing to go, where am I responsible in this?
Mm-hmm.
How can I, because it's all about my behavior. What can I do? How can I change what I'm doing? It's not about what everybody else is doing. I can't change what you're doing or what Jason's doing or what my kids are doing or my neighbor or whatever. I can't force them to do that. You maybe can do something by, like, say my neighbor's piling up garbage. Mm-hmm. Me going and screaming at my neighbor's probably not going to make them clean it up.
No.
I would have to go through the proper channels to get that done, whether it's through my HOA or through the authorities or whatever, if it was causing like a health hazard or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's where I have control, what I can do, and I can control how I react to it. When you start letting your emotions drive the bus, then that's when you start looking like you're not in control of yourself, you're not in control of the situation, and you're not somebody that should be taken seriously.
Yes. I had and I told my client that I was going to use this week because we're talking about DBT. And ironically, one of her friends had said it. And as soon as she said it, I was like, how come I wasn't that genius to say it in the first place? Because not all things come to me at all the same time. But her friend was like, you need to remember that your emotions are toddlers. Are you going to let the toddlers run this house, or are the parents going to come in and take care of the toddlers?
That's right.
So your emotions are your toddlers, just running free.
Yep.
You are the parent that needs to be in charge of your toddlers, not letting the toddlers be in charge of you.
Correct.
And I'm like, you wouldn't let the toddlers drive the bus down the street because they're going to get in an accident. So at some point, you have to take over that ownership and that control in order for you to then drive the bus down the street and get all your toddlers there safely.
And that's where I've talked about that analogy with the bus too. Like, you're driving the bus, and I've talked about like your emotions, your feelings, all that. They're on the bus. You are the one who gets to be like, sit down, shut the fuck up, not right now, or later, honey, we'll deal with that later. It depends on what it is. Like, if I have a really toxic emotion or thought that's trying to come out, I will shut it down real fast and hard. Mm-hmm. I'll be like, we're not thinking bad things about ourselves. You shut the fuck up. That's not what we're thinking. I'm not thinking that I'm a loser right now. You shut the fuck up. Back up. Back of the bus. Back of the bus, bitch. Mm-hmm. And then I'll let somebody that is more supportive come forward. I'll go, hey, kind lady, why don't you come forward and tell me how I did a good job this week for my best friend, or you know, how I got up and exercised every day this week and didn't groan or gripe about it or anything. I was just like, yeah, yoga. Those kinds of things, those little things, help me stay in control of my own bus.
Yes.
Your passengers are going to be different. Mine are fucking rowdy. Like, I got to swear. Swearing is necessary in all aspects of my life. Swearing and marijuana, those are the things that I need to function.
You probably need a little bit more than swearing and marijuana.
Okay, all right, be all dialectical about it, whatever.
I'm just saying. There are other things that bring you joy and fill your heart and your cup.
I like my grandchildren and my children, my husband.
Food.
I like my friends.
Your hair.
I do like my hair.
Makeup.
I like makeup.
Karaoke.
I'm not too hip on food. Food's a betrayer.
Well, but food sustains your life force. Mm-hmm. No? Water?
I like water a lot.
See? So there are other things than just swearing and marijuana that sustain her.
You're welcome. Thanks for that. So, Jason, I'm going to need to talk to you about a new host of the podcast.
And just a reminder, so, because I know that obviously I've done it before in the past where like I describe things, because people that are watching this on YouTube, you can see it. Those of you that are listening to us, you're not seeing it. So skip on over to the We Don't Talk About It page on Facebook, and you can find all the links to all the things. Then you can see us
That's
in
correct.
all of our glory and all of the things that we described.
That is correct.
Absolutely. 100%. Any questions, Jason?
I have a couple of comments, actually. Because as I do, I sit here and I take notes as you two are sitting here talking. And I think about these different aspects that you guys are referring to that I have or I need to incorporate into my day-to-day. The one thing that you said that really struck out or went to the top of this list is the interpersonal effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
This shit needs to be taught at a very early and fundamental age.
Agreed.
Yeah.
We've said that.
I feel like if this was incorporated at a very early and impressionable age, these individuals would have a better grasp on life as they become adults. Because the other part of this was the communication aspect and how this could be very beneficial if it's taught at your place of employment. I think about my place of employment and I think I could run a class based solely on this just in an effort to have a better working environment where you are not around a bunch of toxic and narcissistic fuckholes. Because these are the kind of people that I deal with on the daily. And it is because, and I recognized it before you guys put it into this context using the words that you did, it's because they either have forgotten or they have not been taught what I would categorize this as part of the basic fundamentals of life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't have to be overly complicated, but people make it complicated because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Yeah.
So if we can get back to basics and incorporate things like this, by and large, either your immediate environment or society as a whole would be so much better off. That's number one. Number two, and Joanna, you said this, and this is what registered with me personally, because you know various aspects of personal struggles and, well, we'll just call it bullshit that I'm dealing with. Why are you allowing more patience and grace for other people than yourself? And man, this hammered home, because I can look at certain aspects of my life now and previously, and it's like, why did I give this individual or this entity all this patience, all of this grace, all of this whatever the hell, and I have neglected myself, neglected my feelings? Now, I know part of the answer to that is because I have been point blank told, and I quote, your thoughts and your feelings don't fucking matter. Okay, so when you hear that once, that's going to trigger something. But when you are told that repeatedly, that boundary that I have set in place now as a defense mechanism, those walls get thicker and thicker and thicker. And what I have found is it's not only keeping out the person that laid down the foundation of that particular part of my boundary, I am now incorporating it to and against other people and entities that are not responsible for that. They have now become the collateral damage in all of this. And I'm really making an effort in my day-to-day not to let that be a thing. Keep the person or the situation at bay that caused it, yes, but it's not fair to everybody else in my life, and more specifically, it's not fair to me, because it is very much a response to what I am being met with.
Yep.
Wait. Do you
Go ahead.
you recognize though that's little t trauma right there though? You know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we like that's the kind of shit we're talking about. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Something little and insidious like that can be enough to mind fuck you.
Yep.
Where you're like, yeah, and now that's true, and that's what I'm going to apply to all of my relationships, whether you know it or not. Like unconsciously, you're going to apply that because someone of importance somehow told you that, and then it got stuck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they told you that enough times that your brain went, okay, well, I mean, I guess it's true. So, and that's little t trauma.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to make sure that people hear the difference between that big T and that little t. And we're going to keep reiterating that. It's so important.
Mm-hmm.
I have two more points here.
All right.
The first one is you mentioned, you had mentioned the marijuana aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And using it as, I don't want to say a coping mechanism, but something to take the sting out of it, to kind of calm the waters a little bit so you can kind of focus on the task at hand. And I know a lot of people that will utilize this aspect of it, but much like what you had said, they are self-medicating to the point of trying to hide from the emotions or hide from whatever it is that's causing them this degree of anxiety. And this is where, the stereotypes come into play. And there is a contingent of people that are still very much not supportive of the benefits that marijuana can provide for people. Now, mushrooms are starting to become a thing too. I can say from personal experience, and I don't really talk about it on an open public forum very often, but I am a huge fan and proponent of marijuana, but I am also very mindful about how I utilize it, when I utilize it, and how that's going to affect my course of action or the immediate here and now. And I would implore people to be more conscious about how much are you ingesting. And if you are going, like, there's this point where you're like, okay, I need to get to this point and then everything will calm down and then I can kind of focus. But there's others that go to that point, realize that they're at that point, they're just like, nah, fuck it, I'm just going to get blown right out of my skull, thinking that they are just going to bypass the problem. But much like alcohol, that problem's still going to be there when you wake up from having a half a box of Twinkies and you take a nap in the middle of the afternoon. Your bullshit is still going to be there.
Absolutely.
So let's be mindful of this.
Right.
Now, my final point is this. The word absolutely is Natalie's on this show, Joanna. I'm sorry to say that. It's going to become a t-shirt this week.
We're just kidding. Of course it's her word.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, that's her word.
I got you, Natalie.
Jason. Absolutely is Natalie's word.
So that's really, you said, well, I'm stealing it. And I'm thinking, the fuck you are.
She knew I was kidding. Sorry if you didn't catch that.
We had talked about that.
Yeah.
That's the humor aspect of the show.
I think it'd be funny to switch one show, and like I say absolutely the whole show, and you say,
Yeah. We'd have to have cue cards so we remember what our words are.
We would.
But yeah.
We'd have to have somebody stand in front of us and flip up,
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Gemini would do it.
Gemini would absolutely do it. She really would. Not only does Gemini listen to I don't know if she's watched them yet, but not only does this child of mine listen to the podcast, she reads the transcripts, Jason. She read all the transcripts to see just how often we are saying certain things.
I low-key love that. I really do. That's dedication, man. When you are dialed in to an entity like that, where you're listening to it, but then you're going to take the time to actually read. That's why I won't watch a lot of these foreign movies with the subtitles. I don't want to have to read my shit in order to understand what's going on. So anybody that can do that and does do that, I'm here for it. Like, I appreciate the hell out of that. So thank you for that.
I watch our YouTube with the captions on. I do watch with the captions on, but that's because I'm old and deaf. It's not.
I haven't even watched it.
Reason.
I just listen to them on Spotify.
Oh no, I always watch them.
So I listen,
so I can see how stupid I sound.
And I'm like, interesting.
That way I can see if I'm like or anything.
I should probably do that. Because then I can know what weirdness I'm doing.
You don't really do much weird. It's me.
I do a lot of weird.
I promise I've watched. You don't.
I can verify that, Natalie. You don't really do anything that stands out to be like, No, Joanna, on the other hand, no, I'm just kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I know. I've seen it. I've seen it.
I am totally kidding.
Well, I hope that listeners who have any questions about dialectical behavioral therapy, that they will know to contact us through the show page. We don't talk about that. We did start an email because I had a friend of mine reach out who said, I can't message you. I don't have Messenger and I'm not getting it. Fuck Facebook. And I was like, okay. So I have an email. It's SHWDTAT, Shwedat, because SWDTAT was taken. Shwedat was taken.
What?
Yeah, it was taken.
So now we have
Shwedat.
Shwedat.
We have Shwedat.
At gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Shwedat@gmail.com.
And we'll both get it.
That really surprises me. Of all things.
Me too. I was like, what the fuck? And then they wanted me to put a number after it, and I was like, no. No. Because I couldn't put in one. So I was like, no. I'm not doing numbers. We'll just add an SH and it'll be fine. So if listeners would prefer to email, they can reach us through email that way, and both of us will receive it. So if it's a more clinical question and Natalie's got to respond, then she can do that. If it's something that's geared more towards me, or you address it to one of us specifically, we will see that. But we both check in on the page and the email regularly. By the way, on the page, I don't know which one of y'all is doing it, is liking it under we don't talk about that. I think it's you.
It's me. I'm liking my
own
stuff.
It looks like we don't talk about that is liking our own stuff.
It's weird.
It's not us. Well, it is. But it's her.
I'm old. I switch on my profile. I go to the other profile. I even shared it.
She goes in there and likes all the things.
My own stuff. So once I realized that was me, I'm gonna try not to do that anymore. So
I go in there every day and unlike all the things that she.
And then I'm like, I swear, I just liked this. Now I know. Okay. So if you see that, just know it's me. It's the old one. It's me. I'm doing that.
You are like 3 months older than me, so.
I am.
Yeah, it's our 50th this year.
I can't believe that I was doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's going to not show. Yeah, it does. Okay.
It looks like we post something and then immediately like it. No, and then immediately share it ourselves and then like it.
Yeah, I didn't.
So yeah. I'm deleting our own posts that we've reshared and then unliking things. I'm like, well, whatever. It's getting up views.
At least now the mystery is solved.
There was no mystery for me.
And you would have gotten away with it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Damn kids! Man, Shaggy and Scooby-Doo were a duo.
I know. They were perfect. They were amazing. Oh, I think my dad was Shaggy. You met him.
I did.
My dad was Shaggy. He put away a hoagie and a lot of marijuana. That's all I'm going to say. So, all right, sir. Well, I feel like this was a good show. Thank you for I appreciate your tips, your little pointers there that you gave us or whatever, however you want to word it. I don't know.
His commentary.
Commentary. I don't fucking know. It's the end of the show, and I'm tired now.
Laura. This one needs a nap. She's the old one right now.
It's true. I do need a nap. That was 11 pages of notes I wrote out. I did so much reading. Oh my God, you guys don't even know how much reading I did where I woke up like this. The drool, or sorry, the page would be open. And then the notebook across me and ink somewhere down me and like a blanket or a pillow or something because I just keep writing as I fell asleep. It's been a good week.
That's some dedication.
I was like, I'm staying awake. I'm going to get these notes done.
I mean, and some of the modalities that we'll talk about, like, aren't nearly as full of information.
No,
and
this
some
one is
are
the
just
biggest.
So much.
Well,
like
the
last
two were the biggest, I would say.
Like, I tried to condense like as much as I could, but it's really hard to just give a snippet of something that has so much great information in it.
Right.
So
I
don't
kicked
tune
out
out halfway through. Just like give us a couple days, come back, finish listening so that you can get everything. Because some days there's going to be a lot of information we're going to put out, and some days it's not.
And when we do like today's, I dumped out probably
so much,
2/3 of what I wanted to share.
Yeah.
And just stuck with, okay, what do I actually use? What do I think will be beneficial?
Yeah.
You know, what are the, you know, what's the meat and potatoes of this?
Yeah, for sure.
What'll get people hopefully interested enough to go get themselves a meal.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you and your commentary. Thank you for your words. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you. And my verbiages. And my communicative nature.
I made her pinwheels. She's very happy with me.
Oh, my snacks were good today.
Yeah.
And we appreciate all the listeners, all the viewers.
We love our listeners and our viewers.
We wouldn't be able to put this out into the ether, so we're super happy and grateful for that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely true. Sorry.
You know,
completely true.
You know,
trying not to say absolutely now because I've been banned from using it.
You can still use that.
She gave me permission.
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, sir.
All right. Well, I certainly appreciate the both of you for taking time out of your day to do the show. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or feedback, anything like that, like you said, head over to the Facebook page, or you can go to pfcnetwork.net, which is now the official website, finally, of this entire network. And in this week, when you go to the show page, it will have its own designated space on there with a few clips of the show. Your contact information, your new email will be included in that. It'll be your one-stop place to go to for everything on this show. So I'm trying to make things very inclusive.
Fantastic. You're the best, man.
Listen, we're continuously trying to grow and evolve here, and this is part of it. So
that's right. Perfect.
Appreciate the both of you. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And with that, we'll put a bow on this. And we will see you next time right here on Shh, We Don't Talk About That here on the PFC Entertainment Network.